Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. I'm Cade Kennedy, joined here by Andrew Santangelo, and Connor Gray will join us shortly. We have a lot to talk about today, whether it be NBA, NHL, a little bit of NFL, a little bit of everything, college baseball included. But as always, getting started here, please be sure to like the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel, whether this be NWTV7 or The Guys Who Stare at Stats. Now on to the rest of the show. And as always, Andrew, as we get started, the question of the day, always, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, end of the week here, getting excited. Got a lot of news to talk about. Got a big Game 6 tonight. We'll see what happens. Got some exciting news for my hometown, and a lot to dive into here. I hope everything's well with you.
It is. Everything is going well. We'll get started on pretty much why things are going well so far. This nice trade right here. Last night, I was gifted a gem of an article. Hey, Christian Wood might be traded to the Mavericks. This might happen. And I was like, oh, that's wonderful. And then 10 minutes later, oh, yeah, by the way, it's going to happen. Okay, for what? Oh, the 26th pick. Who else? Trey Burke, Sterling Brown, Marquise Chris. I mean, we do lose Boban, which is a sad day for Dallas, but
that's more of a fan favorite.
It's more of a
fan, talent,
yeah. That's more of a fan favorite. I'll miss him being on the bench and being taller than literally every person and wanting Boban in the final 2 minutes of every game. But other than that, you get a solid 17-10 guy in Christian Wood and an actual center. I'm happy that the Mavs have decided to get an actual center. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty funny. This trade happens right after our Tuesday show. We talking about, what the Mavericks possibly going to do. We mentioned Andre Drummond. We mentioned this kind of trade.
Yeah.
Christian Wood really wasn't a guy I really even thought of. Like, he didn't seem like he was on the market or anything, but credit to Mark Cuban. Goes out, does his job, finds a way to get him. Like you said, that really basically traded a really good player for nothing in that sense. I mean, your biggest thing out of that trade is you probably lost a good actor. I don't know if you saw the movie Hustle on Netflix, but he was in that and did pretty well.
Well, we also lost a good actor in Boban. He was in John Wick 3. I mean,
yeah, that's true. That's how I meant Boban.
We traded actors.
But, no, I think this trade overall very good. The only thing that scares me is some of the teams Christian Wood's played on. You've heard his kind of locker room presence isn't the best. That's the only concerning thing here for Dallas is how is he going to get along with guys like Luka, Jalen Brunson, Spencer Dinwiddie. And obviously, I mean, Porzingis was never really mentioned as a bad locker room guy overall, but there's been question marks, and obviously it almost forced his way out of there. So that is my only concern with this trade. But again, even if it doesn't work out, it's not like you traded a top-notch player and lost out on that player in this trade. You lost out on maybe Trey Burke and Boban. So that's the exciting thing here for Dallas overall.
Yeah, the one thing I'm excited about, I mean, having a guy who can give you a solid 17-10. About the locker room presence, I agree. That is a big scare. But when you look at the teams he's played on, I mean, a Houston team that was deliberately tanking, Detroit, who was just, Detroit. I don't blame him for being mad about. I mean, when you're on a bad team, that's going to cause some negative aspects, I would think. I know it'll be interesting to see because of the kind of culture the Mavs have anyway, this kind of family culture here. And, I mean, I've also heard, Christian Wood's a defensive liability. Well, I mean, look at half the Mavs team was a defensive liability, you would think. Jalen Brunson, people thought he was too small. He's played solid defense. Luka, Euros don't play defense. He's out there trying. I mean, that's something I didn't think I'd ever say, but, something we always joked about, okay, here's our star European that will never play defense ever. And here they are playing good defense sometimes. And I think if you can build this team up with how they went on this Western Conference run, now you have an actual lob threat, a guy that can shoot threes. You have a stretch five. How long has it been since Dallas has had a stretch five? I mean, Porzingis, you could kind of say, I guess, but he's a stretch four.
Everybody knows
he's the stretchiest of stretch fours. But I'm excited to see how Dallas looks next year and what other moves they make. Now, talking about your team, we talked about Dallas. Fair, we talk about Philadelphia next. Sources saying that James Harden will sign a short-term extension with Philadelphia, so you'll get Embiid and Harden back for next year's run. So, as a Philadelphia fan, how do you feel about this with Harden coming back?
No, I'm excited. I know a lot of people are kind of mixed on Harden. I don't know who's really is the age getting to him and everything. But my thing is, I'd rather do this short-term deal. You're going to sign him to a 2-3 year deal, a lot less than $48 million, which he'd been guaranteed if he opted into the contract, and I think it's like a 5% raise after that or something crazy like that. So I'm excited if this is true. Obviously, like you mentioned, it's still in the works. Hopefully, it does fall into the Sixers' favor. And he mentioned it at the end of the year press conferences last year. Is he's willing to do what it takes to stay here and take a pay cut. But everyone, obviously, you've heard guys do that before. So it's like, oh, how much is that true? How much is he just saying that for the media on that given day or whatever? But
yeah,
I mean, you're one step closer, at least from the media here, in the terms of that becoming true. And it'll give you options elsewhere to figure out what you want to do. And luckily, this team still has Maxey on the his rookie deal. You have Thibault one more year on his rookie deal. So it's going to be big in that sense. It'll still give you a viable option to maybe make another move here or there somewhere else to shore up the bench. Because that's the biggest question with the Sixers, the bench. So as long as you can lock up Harden here.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking like it'll be more a 2 or 3 year deal, it looks like, for James Harden, which I think is a good time. You still have that window opportunity. The window is still there. You still have an opportunity to compete for championships. There's nothing Philadelphia can't do. I mean, you've seen every team in the East has a weakness.
Yes.
The West, I mean, you can say the same thing, but I will always argue the West is better than the East because, I mean, the Warriors exist. I mean, that's kind of a point A, the Warriors, point B, LeBron.
Yeah. Well, and to your point about the window, you have to take advantage of the window now because, listen, obviously I'm a huge Joel Embiid fan. But
you didn't do the process for nothing.
Well, that too. But obviously I'm a big Embiid fan, and listen, I mean, obviously I hope not, but you look at the history of centers, they fall off a lot quicker than a guard or a forward just because of, I guess, how big they are. I guess that's why. They're like, I don't know the science behind it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at Yao Ming, you look at like those guys, like they fall off a little bit, and Embiid's already had his injury history, obviously, and he had to get 3 surgeries this offseason. So he's obviously dealing with stuff that way. So he's hitting 30, I think, next year. So you got to take advantage of the window now, and because I mean, after that. Say you sign Harden a 3-year deal. After that 3 years, you have Embiid at 33. So how big is that window is the question.
Yep, that is going to be an interesting question for Philadelphia. Also, free agency 2 weeks away.
Can't wait.
the greatest offseason in sports, it's on its way. Speaking of that great offseason, Chet Holmgren has not provided his medical information to teams, at least most of them, and didn't do the NBA's heart screening, which could suggest his agents are trying to manipulate the draft a bit, which is something that I really did not expect to happen. I've never heard of this before as Connor Gray joins the show here. But I really don't know how to feel about this. This is something I've never heard of before, where a player kind of openly manipulating the draft like this.
Yeah, I mean, you see it when you got guys that are in question, and you see injuries play players down and force them to fall later in the draft. I mean, just take this year's NFL draft. You had the big linebacker, Nakobe Dean. He was supposed to go first round. He had injury question marks, and he did the same thing. He didn't provide that, and he falls to the 3rd round. So he cost himself 2 rounds in the draft. So who knows how that's going to impact here with Chet. I've said before, I'm already worried about Chet, so this is even more of a worry. But, I mean, if I'm a top 3 team, you need almost a sure thing pick, and this would scare me away from him, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. You got anything on this, Connor?
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Okay, we're just talking about Chet Holmgren here, guy from Gonzaga, big center. But moving on to the next move, you might know a little bit more about this, being the Thunder. There has been some increasing talk. Portland might trade the 7th pick to Oklahoma City for the number 12 pick in a package that could potentially involve Lou Dort. And you get a guy that's averaging 17 a game for the Thunder, a good all-around guy, offense, defense, can do it all. Could be interesting to see what Portland wants to do here. I mean, Portland has been trying to get a second guy really to go with Lillard. I mean, I guess they feel confident Lou Dort could be that guy.
I would say this is like if Portland's willing to, if they're pretty much targeting the 7th selection to give it to Oklahoma City. You're Oklahoma City, you probably take it. Take it because, hey, you can get the guy that you want or someone that you might take a steal from someone really quickly up higher.
Yeah.
Especially you already had the 2nd pick. Mm-hmm. If you get number 7, you're already putting yourself in a better position to get a better player.
Yeah.
Instead of having to sit there back in the draft waiting, hopefully someone falls to you.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this would depend on what end of package, what that package is. If it's anything like just a 2nd-round pick or something like that, I wouldn't do it. You already know what you can get out of Lou Dort. Obviously, he had a fantastic year. You're going to have the number 2 pick. I'm not a huge fan of the depth in this draft class, so that's why that would kind of scare me here. If it was a really stacked year where you have a lot of different options, then maybe you move up so you have 2 and 7. But for me, if you're willing to trade that number 12 pick, I'd look elsewhere, maybe for a proven veteran like bench piece or something like that, because this Thunder team, they got a couple young guys last year that performed really well. Start to build off that.
Yep. Yep, I can see that as well. Portland's, though, they're trying to get that second guy, and we'll see if they have any luck with that. And then a little lighthearted news. The NFL has officially announced this year over the offseason that multiple helmets are back. This is a good thing, everybody. Saints have unveiled a black helmet that they plan to use this season. I'm in favor of it. You already have gold and black. Now you have black and gold. It's nice, just simple. Don't need to think about it too hard. Just go ahead and do it. Just create alternate helmets. Bring all the alternate helmets back. I saw Atlanta's going to do a red throwback helmet. The Commanders, I think, are planning on doing multiple helmets. I think they might have a black helmet they might do as well.
I mean, if you're any team right now, I would prefer you probably try many alternate styles of your helmets as possible. Yeah. I know some teams, like especially for Dallas, they don't necessarily have much of a change in regards to how they do their helmets, besides probably obviously an alternate color.
They need to bring one that just says 1990s on it. That's what they need to do.
But it's they obviously for them it either just be just the regular Dallas logo with the white helmet instead of the regular silver. Mm-hmm. But obviously there's many different combinations. I mean, as long as they don't go navy blue with the helmet, it's fine because it'll look terrible.
Yeah, no, I think this helmet's cool. I think the NFL did the right thing. They finally opened it up. I mean, you look at one of the best parts about college football for kind of average viewers. They love the different uniforms and everything, and they love seeing all the different combinations. So I think this bodes well for the NFL to do that, and obviously the revenue will go up because they can sell more helmets.
Obviously, I will say is obviously for us, we like the different alternate styles. Obviously, much older folk only want one thing and one thing only. Like, especially like I know what Cade's told me with some OU fans, they're like, we need to keep it normal. It's
here's the thing.
Tradition.
Here's how I feel about it though. College football, if you're a traditional power, you stay with your look. You don't want to see Penn State going out there wearing blue helmets. That'd look ridiculous. But if NFL teams, I'm all for it. Wear an Oilers throwback. Wear an old school AFL Patriots throwback.
Well, there's nothing
Go
wrong.
for it.
I'd say even if you're a traditional power, there's nothing wrong with mixing it up every now and then.
Yes, there is. You already have your look. You don't need to change your look to somebody else.
Yes,
when you got Oregon out there looking like, the Nike team of the week, they had no tradition, so they could go ahead and do it. If Alabama was to come out with white helmets, that'd look really weird. Or wear like houndstooth or something ridiculous.
Well, it's like not just referring to helmets, like they can have different style of color jersey or pants.
Oklahoma, if they ever wear black jerseys, there's going to be a lot of people upset in this state. I'll just let you know right now. If they ever come out and wear black anything in football.
Well, they have no. Well, sadly, the fans can't necessarily dictate it. Players are usually a lot in favor of all that stuff.
Well, before I make my college football point, let me ask you, why is the NFL different? Like, why is that any different than, say, the Cowboys going away from their classic uniforms?
To me, it's different because, well, I'll be honest, I don't care as much. That's the main difference. I'll be completely honest.
Fake NFL fan right here.
I don't care about the NFL. I've said this many times. I ride or die with Baker Mayfield. That's my NFL allegiance.
Let's go Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, my dream is always Baker versus Kyler Super Bowl, and now we may not do that anymore. We might get, I don't know.
This man doesn't care for Kyler Murray.
I do care about Kyler Murray. He's very cool and runs very fast. It's great. He also is a great baseball player. And my whole deal with, I care more about it in college football, I think just because it's been around a little bit longer. And, I mean, granted, it's like 30 years, not the biggest difference in the world. We're talking 1800s versus 1920s. But to me, there's just kind of some prestige about seeing these older uniforms. Like Texas wearing their nice uniforms they have, USC with the classic looks they have, the Penn States, the Alabamas of the world. It's a timeless look. You can look and say, wow, they've worn this all the way since 1930. Well, you know who Alabama is. You look at any photo, you see, oh, that's Alabama. You look at, Kansas or Kansas State, and you see their logo when it changes every 5 years. To me, that's a sign of we can't establish ourselves as a program, so we have to change our look. Okay, we still can't do it, so we have to change our look. okay, we still can't do it, so we have to change our look. And then
K-State
they
hasn't
finally
really changed a lot of their looks in.
They haven't since the 80s because they finally established on a brand, a good brand, the Power Cat logo.
And Kansas hasn't changed theirs in over 20 years.
They change that Jayhawk every once in a while. They haven't done it in a long time.
They barely change it.
I know, but still, it's the idea that you have to change it in general, which is ridiculous to me. You could stick with the old 40s Jayhawk, and it'd look probably better, just slightly.
And also, you grew up in a household where your dad never really only rooted for the Patriots every now and then, and also just instilling you with. Obviously, here in Oklahoma, it's college football. You ride or die with it.
Yes, college football, good. I agree.
But for me, obviously, growing up in an NFL household, I was like, I love the NFL.
Yeah.
So it's like so your weird opinion that, well, they're different. It's like, well, it's just, and then you've basically just made, well, the care level. It's like, that's still not necessarily a great argument to stand on, but fine, that's your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the college football, to me, has more tradition because it's been around longer. The Super Bowl, obviously, is the biggest thing in sports, but I value, like, a Rose Bowl or a Cotton Bowl or a Sugar Bowl or something like that. To me,
that's lost a lot of its prestige.
To me, that's still important stuff I'll sit down and watch. I can miss a wild card game. I can go back and look that stuff up. To me, there's something still prestigious about sitting down on New Year's Day and watching the Rose Bowl or watching a Cotton Bowl or a Sugar Bowl. Because I guess that's just what I was raised with. Those are the big games. You sit down and watch those. Even if your team's not in it, that's history being made right there. Super Bowl, of course, I'm always going to sit down and watch because it's the most important thing in the world.
Then the tradition's a good answer. That's why I just didn't know. I was just curious why it was different. But no, tradition's a good answer. And I will say in terms of the tradition standpoint, and I mean, I watch every game anyway, but
yeah,
I think none of us are average viewers. We obviously watch a lot of sports, but I feel like now with the college football playoffs, though, those Rose Bowls, like all those bowl games have taken a hit in terms of that because now everyone's like for the whatever the year is where whatever the playoff games are that year. Those obviously have now taken a more significant meaning. I think for average fans, obviously, we watch like every game in the world, so I can't speak on it because I'm going to watch it regardless. But I feel like for an average fan now, you're okay with missing one of those games just because it doesn't have as much of that tradition that you were mentioning.
Yes, well, and I agree with that.
I will also say that in regards to the tradition of college football, many even established programs have lost aspects of their tradition because instead of the brands holding all that power, more of that power has gone to the players. Mm-hmm. You don't have players staying with teams all 4 years. Some of them are 2 years and done.
Yep.
Done, which you understand. You go get your money. I have no issue with that. But players will transfer. Many different players will transfer all around from all the way from FBS down to NAIA. Yeah. It's players have more control over their destinies than they used to. Well, is basically if you got with an established program like Oklahoma, Alabama, Penn State, Miami, you ride and died with those programs because they held that prestige that could get you somewhere because that's where people look to as the best teams in the nation.
Yeah. I will say off that real quick, I blame professional sports for that case. I think a lot of that college stuff really started to happen when you had all the players leaving and kind of controlling where they want to go. I mean, point to the NBA especially. I mean, name the superstar who has left their team and has lost that tradition and the what's the word I'm looking for? The loyalty towards their team. I mean, you have obviously LeBron leaving. You have Kevin Durant leaving. Yeah. I mean, even you go to other sports now, and I mean, obviously I'm a big Phillies fan, so I'll use them as an example. But back when they signed Roy Oswalt, Roy Halladay, obviously I had Cole Hamels, but then they gave in Cliff Lee as well. I mean, you have all these superstars. You used to see, I mean, look at Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe Bryant. I mean, that was that kind of era. Now you have all that kind of switch. And, I mean, who's your – I mean, I guess you'd probably say Curry, but who's the big-time guy that's staying with their teams nowadays? And
Lillard's is one of the last of a dying breed.
Exactly.
Obviously, Lillard getting traded, or leaving, not Philly, Portland.
I wish Philly.
I was about to say.
That was the one that I was like, why don't they just send Lillard to Philly? Because that would have been a better trade-off for, I think, the Sixers. Then
he doesn't want to leave.
I understand he doesn't want to leave, but obviously the NBA has made it to where obviously players get to control their own destiny, which I have no issue with. It's obviously one of those things where it's it's a hard thing to talk where in regards to the arguments in regards to and debate about loyalty is obviously a hard thing to come by. When you have players that give their loyalty, they end up getting stabbed in the back by the teams they thought, the ownership that they gave their loyalty to. I mean, Blake Griffin didn't want to leave the Los Angeles Clippers, and then sometime after they gave him a massive extension, they ended up trading him off to Detroit. So it's like it's just one of those things where loyalty bites you in the ass, even though that's just how things work.
Yeah, it is one of those things where, to me, I guess it's more loyalty is one of those things that I think still is there in the college game that it isn't in professional sports. I think to me that's, at least from my perspective, the way I see it, at least with Oklahoma. You know the OU people are going to ride and die with Oklahoma. You know the players aren't because they're going to go get their money. And we're at the point where we understand that. We don't like it, but we understand it.
And also, I think it also depends on the coaching staff that they're around, I will say.
That too.
I will say under Lincoln Riley, there was a culture of players really just kind of went and did their own thing. There was no sense of loyalty to whatever. I understand you had many players that stayed all 4 years, but that was mainly because they were getting opportunities to be on the big time.
Yes.
And obviously, there was not necessarily a culture there. While with Oklahoma State, guys ride and died with Mike Gundy.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another Lincoln Riley problem that a lot of OU people didn't like.
That was one thing I will say that Bob Stoops had was that he commanded the loyalty of his players, and they loved him for it.
Yeah, you could tell Bob wanted to be there every single day. He absolutely loved his job. He loved the university. He loved his players. He loved everything about it. And in turn, the fan base loved him because, I mean, he was the guy. He brought OU out of the darkest pit they had been in forever in football history.
No, they were I know when they brought him in that helped, but I think they were getting there without him. They just flipped a coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, you got a guy who could not only recruit and win instead of a guy who could just recruit. But I did not expect to have this much of a debate off of one black helmet, but here we are.
Well, that's what happens when stuff gets brought up.
Yeah, it happens. But moving on to other news, the World Cup. This is just an hour old. The 2026 host sites have been revealed for the World Cup with 11 venues in the United States, 3 in Mexico, and 2 in Canada. For the United States, you're going to have games at MetLife Stadium, which is New York, New Jersey, SoFi in Los Angeles, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Levi's Stadium for San Francisco, Hard Rock Stadium for Miami, the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium for Atlanta, Lumen Field for Seattle, NRG for Houston, Lincoln Financial for Philly, Arrowhead for Kansas City, and Gillette for Boston. Interesting stuff there.
I want to take a trip to Kansas City to go watch some soccer. That'd be fun.
That would be interesting to see. Now, there were a few places that missed out that wanted to host. I mean, Denver, Nashville, Cincinnati, Orlando, and Baltimore also placed bids for the U.S. to host, as well as Edmonton. They tried. Shout out Edmonton. They tried to get another Canadian city. But instead, they just went with Toronto and Vancouver. And in Mexico, they went with Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Mexico City. So,
is there like a central location they'll have where they'll have the round of 16 or something like that?
That is what I'm trying to look through right
They probably haven't determined that yet.
Yeah, that'll probably be a
it's
interesting.
Mainly because it's basically a North American FIFA World Cup.
Yes.
But obviously, what I was mainly concerned is do they even have a centralized area? But I guess obviously, like you said, they'll figure it out when they get there.
Yeah, that's usually they've got 4 years to figure this out. I would hope they have a plan. Now, none of the original venues from the last time the World Cup came to the U.S. in '94, so there will be no Rose Bowl championship this time, even though that'd be pretty interesting. That's probably not the best place to have a soccer game.
They mix it up a little bit. They don't have the same stadiums.
Yeah. And that brings us into, doesn't really, but I'm going to say it anyway. This brings us into the big story of the day, Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Golden State and Boston. Warriors can close it out tonight, or do the Celtics force a Game 7? Celtics are a 3.5-point favorite, as you would expect, an over-under of 211 points. So, as always, a lot of scoring expected in these. Should be a fun game. So, I know we talked about this, I think, a little bit on Tuesday's show for maybe a minute or two, wanting to kind of keep it more for today's show. But what does each team need to do if they want to win this game? Warriors have won 2 in a row. They're trying to close off. They have not won a closeout game on the road yet this postseason. They're 0-3.
It's still once again a tough decision because you don't know how Boston or the Warriors will play. I mean, Warriors last couple of games have looked good. Have looked overall good. I mean, last game, obviously you had Wiggins play very well, and you also had not Curry, because Curry only had 16, but Clay played a little better. I mean, you had Warriors as an overall team played better even when Curry wasn't there. If Curry actually played like how he played Game 3 and 4, that would have been a blowout. But obviously Boston, with their struggles, not everyone. It's like they can't seem to get at least three to four guys to all go all out in one game. It's like it's always, you have three, but Tatum falters when basically leaving it up to Smart and the other guys to actually do something. If they can get pretty much their main starting lineup and anyone that can come off the bench to at least help with support, Boston probably could easily win the game. But that mainly comes down to does Curry not play well. I'm mainly looking at Curry, see how well he's going to play. Obviously, you want to look at Clay and how Wiggins and basically the rest of that the depth for the Warriors will pay off. I think at the end of the day, I think Warriors will finish it off. Boston just cannot seem to get it together when they need it most. I think Warriors finish it out in 6.
Yeah, this game's going to be intriguing. I think if the Celtics want to win, they have to stop Andrew Wiggins. I think he's been the one the last couple of games that's really killing them. Obviously, Curry's going to be able to do his thing. He's not going to go 0 for 8 or 0 for 9, whatever it was, from 3 again. You know he's going to hit a couple of those at least. You know Klay Thompson's going to get 2 or 3 threes in this game. The question is, you're letting Andrew Wiggins get 20 points. You're letting him get 14, 15 rebounds. They got to find a way to hit the boards and slow Andrew Wiggins down on the offensive and defensive rebounds. So it's going to come into play for Williams. Both Williams is on the Celtics, and even maybe Tatum is a matchup there for Wiggins. So I'm interested to see how they respond. It's going to, for Celtics players, it's going to be up to Jason Tatum to respond. He has not been efficient shooting-wise. I know he's been getting points, but overall his efficiency hasn't been there. Marcus Smart, you know what he'll do on defense. He'll be fine. He just needs to, kind of like Draymond Green, he needs to control his temper a little bit. You can't afford another technical foul there, especially in an elimination game. It's going to come down to that here, and I think the Celtics take Game 6. I really do. I think they'll force the Game 7, especially with it being back in Boston. Celtics are a really good team. It's going to be tough to beat them 3 times in a row, especially twice in Boston. So I'm gonna go with Boston here. I think they'll make the adjustments needed to pull this game off and force this Game 7 and create one more day of the NBA. I will say this, though. I don't know if you guys saw this. Adam Silver is still in COVID protocols.
He's still in COVID.
So in the event the Warriors do win, I guess it's the assistant commissioner.
Yeah, it'd be Mark Tatum.
It'll be kind of – this could be the biggest day of his life so far, handing out that trophy.
Yeah, I mean, biggest days in Mark Tatum's life. Second round of NBA drafts, draft lottery, 2022 NBA Finals Game 6. He's on high alert today, boys. This is going to be a good day for him.
But I will say,
knowing him means the Celtics will win and he won't get to do it. And
he's a Warriors fan, though, so he can have that moment.
Yeah, I'm just going to hope Adam Silver gets better. Hope he's back. If they goes to Game 7, hopefully he's back by then.
I would hope so. I mean, I don't want to.
If not, hopefully
bring Roger Goodell in so everyone can just boo him instead. Get Tom Brady just like it's like sitting in a corner, just have him like WWE just come out of nowhere and do an RKO.
It's Tom Brady! It's Tom Brady!
Yeah, I don't know. Just do some crazy events if Adam Silver can't beat her.
Dude, if they did something like that, that would be the greatest thing ever.
That just out of nowhere, like Curry's just doing like in Finals MVP Steph Curry. It's Roger Goodell. What is he doing here? Oh my God, it's Tom Brady. It's just like what in the world is happening?
As a fan of that type of thing, I love that. That would make me happy.
It just pans to Vince McMahon, and he's just watching the whole thing at the top or something. It's like he orchestrated this whole thing. Everything is the WWE. But, I think the main thing for today, if the Warriors are going to win this, it's going to have to come from Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Andrew Wiggins, I think he's going to do his thing. We've seen this. The man's going to get 17 points. He's a walking 17 points. Nothing more, nothing less. But those rebounds and assists and steals and blocks, that's everything else. If he can get a third straight double-double, I think Warriors win this game. If Game 6 Klay does Game 6 Klay things, Warriors win this game. But if one of those two doesn't happen, and if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown play like they're capable of, Marcus Smart doesn't shoot himself into a slump, Al Horford does what he does, play solid basketball, that's all you need him to do, I really think the Celtics can win this game. I don't see all three things going the Warriors' way of the trifecta. I think something's going to happen. This might be the game they finally figure out Wiggins, and I don't know how you switch that on him because, I mean, you throw Robert Williams at him, you throw Al Horford at him. I think if you keep throwing a new person on him early, try to get a little bit more physical, I think that's one of the ways you can get to the Warriors. I mean, except for Draymond Green. That's the one guy you can't do that to. He'll just do whatever he can. So, but I think Boston takes it here. It'll be a fun game. It'll be close, but I think we'll have a Game 7, and we'll get all the way to Sunday before the offseason begins.
So, Ken, is there anything Wiggins can do tonight to steal MVP from Curry?
Yes, if he has like 20 rebounds. If he has a 20-20 game.
If he has another rebound game and Curry doesn't overshadow by scoring a bunch of points. Because I think if Curry gets like 30-plus points, they're going to more likely hand to, especially they're going to look at the earlier games and obviously that Game 4 where he shot 43. They're going to look at that one and be like, right now he's the front runner, but if Wiggins has a 20-plus rebound game, Curry doesn't shoot well and they win tonight, and Wiggins has like 20 points, around 20 points, they're going to probably he could steal the MVP, but I just don't see it.
I don't know either, but my whole Wiggins path to victory here, got to have a 20-20 game, I think, minimum, just because people are still going to talk. Well, Curry had 43 in a game, which is impressive, but that's one game out of 6. You got to look at what Andrew Wiggins is consistently doing. If he can drop a 20-20 game or maybe even a 25 or 30-point game and get a double-double, who knows? Maybe Andrew Wiggins drops a triple-double. If you do that, you have to give it to him.
Wiggins starting out the series wasn't strong, but obviously these last couple games he's played much better.
Yeah, he's developing rather quickly in this Finals MVP race.
He's actually looking like a top draft pick.
He's living up to that Maple Jordan nickname of his for once, which is good to see. It's good to see. I know some Andrew Wiggins stands out there will be happy about that. Yes, they exist. I know them.
So real quick to reverse it, if Celtics are up 3-2, who's their MVP right now? I go Brown.
I would too.
I would say Brown.
Yeah. I mean, unless you wanted to be silly and do an Iguodala thing, but it's Marcus Smart because defense wins championships. I'm sure someone would say that.
I mean, if I would,
I would say Tatum's too. I don't think he's done that bad. I just know he's in as well as Brown.
It's Tatum. Like those first couple of games would be a stain on trying to win MVP. Obviously, he played better these last. I'd say the last 3 games. Like he's gotten better overall. No, last game was his best one, where the rest of everyone else just faltered. But it's gonna be a hard one. It's like Brown. Most of those games played well. Smart had a couple where he played well, but it would be Brown in my opinion.
Yeah, but that will do it for NBA coverage for now. Maybe we'll get to talk about another game. Maybe we'll get to recap 2 games. Maybe not. We'll see.
We'll find out next Tuesday.
What I can tell you is that Tampa and Colorado was a wonderful game.
That was a great game.
This was everything I thought it would be. I have never gotten I should have went to Vegas. It was 4-3. I literally said 4-3. It's close. I'm never going to get that correct on anything ever again. So I'm retiring. No,
so I took the over on that one. So
yeah. Well, I mean the over/under was 6, so it was 7. So we all win except Andrew, sadly. But he'll get one back.
I have my Arkansas pick.
There you go. There you go. You have that going for you. So Colorado getting a 4-3 overtime win. This went about how we thought it would. Colorado starting off just punch after punch after punch. Doesn't matter if it's Landeskog, Nichushkin, Lehkonen. It really didn't matter. Colorado just able to dogpile on Tampa early, 3-1.
It's pretty much was just 2 quick goals, not that far from less than a minute and a half. I'd say around a minute and a half. But it was like you got that first goal, and then a minute and a half later hits the next one. It was like, oh, so it's gonna be this kind of game. And then luckily for Tampa, they got a goal, but then they ended up giving up a third one going into the first period.
Silly power play.
But they finally managed to tie it up. That was where I was worried Colorado's defense would falter a little bit because they were obviously you're relying a lot on your offense. Then obviously both teams played great defense. Goalies did a really good job in the third period, and then not very long into the overtime got the goal. for Colorado. So that was I caught the. It was like that was just a great game to watch. I watched the highlights like 3 different times. It was so good.
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch. Watching the crowd in person just lose their mind there that first period. You go on Twitter and you see every Colorado fan. Here we go. This is the death of Tampa Bay. It's happening. What have I said all year? You never count out a defending champion.
No.
And here comes Tampa. Palat, Sergachev, get everything going, tie the game. I'm going to tell you, it was, as a St. Louis fan who's still salty about how the second round went, seeing the fear in Colorado fans' eyes for just a brief moment of, like, the realization of, oh, this is what happens when you play a back-to-back defending champion. It's like, yes. Welcome to reality, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third period, just beautiful defensive hockey all around. And then Pat Maroon, with a minute 45 left in the game, hits the puck out of the rink, and you get a delay of game. So you get a 2-minute power play, and oh boy, that place went crazy. Ball Arena went nuts, and they got lucky. Tampa Bay played good defense. They locked it down. Vasilevsky played amazing in the net. Go to overtime, and this always happens. Colorado and Tampa are both very good at 2 minutes into an overtime. They end it. And you knew one of them had to do it, and this time it was Burakovsky getting the goal to get the 4-3 win. So, with that being said, moving to Game 2, going to be interesting here. Colorado's still the favorite in this one. Braden Point was back for Tampa Bay, so you got your starting center back. Kadri, we have no idea. Apparently he was warming up today, helping with the team in practice and everything. Still listed here as out technically for Game 2. That could change over time. We'll see how that works. But this is going to be a lot of fun. If Game 1 was fun, I think Game 2 is going to be even better. So if you're Tampa Bay, what do you need to do to even the series? I know you kind of saw some of their game plan last night. What do they have to execute better?
I think that as good as the game was for fans to watch, I thought if you were a Tampa Bay fan, a coach, or even a player, you're coming out of that game angry. I thought it was a very sloppy game for them as a whole. You saw turnover after turnover. It hurt them in the beginning. That's why that overtime goal was scored. They turned it over right at the blue line.
Yep.
Turned into that break. So if I'm Tampa Bay, really it's nothing really with your game plan because I thought their game plan was good. I know Colorado jumped on them early, but overall they still obviously played them well enough to get to overtime. I think you just got to clean up the turnovers. That's really – both teams really, I mean, your game plan went in really well. Obviously Colorado's definitely worked getting out there, but for me, Tampa Bay, I'd ride out with the same game plan. It was obviously a really good game overall. You just got to clean up the turnovers, and I think you might win that game.
I think with Colorado, it's like – I think a good amount of their reliance was getting the goals really early because I think when the game gets stretched out, obviously it's a full-length game, but still it's like 60 minutes. But even through that 60 minutes, Colorado isn't necessarily right in that middle really doing much. I mean, I know that was different when you play Edmonton because they didn't have it was basically like 6-on-5 or whatever because they don't have their goalie really is useless in Edmonton. No offense to him, but he didn't play well.
He didn't.
But Colorado, obviously for them, they got points early. I mean, if they don't get those goals, they lose to Tampa. That was with Tampa not playing good right out the gate. Now I think for Game 2, you're going to get a Tampa that's going to be ready to go to try to hit them in the mouth right out the gate, and that's something you got to do with, like we said Tuesday, you got to do with Colorado. You got to hit them in the mouth, and that was something St. Louis was able to do, but everyone else struggled with.
To be fair, Tampa Bay did have 40 hits, and Colorado had 43, so it was a very hard-hitting game.
Yeah, very physical. Yeah, that's what the whole series will be.
Yeah, it's like I understand that, but it was mainly do that again.
Yes,
but actually win the hits in regards to that, and also do not let Colorado score because and obviously like you said, they can't do turnovers. If they keep turning the puck right on their side of the blue line, they're gonna give up goals really quickly because, man, as great as the Lightning have been overall, when you have like 2-on-1, 3-on-1, it's going to be hard for your goalie to really do anything. Mm-hmm. It's like he only can do so much. That's where the defense has got to do a better job getting the puck up the ice.
Yep. To me, Tampa Bay, like Andrew said, I like their game plan. You got to make this physical. You got to slow Colorado down. After that first period, they did a phenomenal job executing their game plan. except for turning the puck over. That's, obviously number one. To me, the big thing besides turnovers is shots. You only shot 21 times. Colorado got 38 shots. You cannot have that 17-shot differential again because you're going to get shellacked. That is how Colorado operates.
And that was really weird because against the Rangers, they were basically out shooting the Rangers by a long, but not by a long shot, but they were getting like plus 30, plus 40 shots on the Rangers. So and the Rangers are a good defensive team. So it's that's where Tampa's got to keep up. I mean, you cannot lose a shot battle with Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where the turnovers come into play.
That's true. That is true.
There. Hockey doesn't keep track of turnovers, but I don't really know how much they had. I know they had
too many.
4. Yeah, they had like 4 in the span of a minute when I was watching because they had a chance to really jump on them after that second goal to tie it, and they kept turning it over. And Colorado could have had the lead right back.
Yeah,
but luckily Tampa Bay was able to hold them off. So you're able to limit those turnovers. You'll get more shots off and everything. And with how quick Colorado is, I don't think you're really going to win the shot battle that much just because they throw so much on the net with how quick they are. So it's always going to be tough to beat them. But like you guys said, 17's too much, but you take care of those turnovers, you'll limit more shots on them and get more. So.
I mean, if you're within 10, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. But almost 20 shots behind, that's way too much. So it's like you said, I don't think Tampa will probably ever win the shot battle, but you got to keep it relatively close.
Yeah, that's got to be the thing they do. But when it comes to picking, I know I'll get back to you two on this. This really does feel like the Blues series to me. I feel that Tampa Bay has the game plan. They have the opportunities. They have the talent. They have the depth. They have everything going in place. So I got to go back to my original game plan of Tampa every time. I think Tampa wins game 2. I really think they're going to come out. They're going to stun this home crowd. And I think Tampa will get the job done. Something about them with how they played game 1, I think they'll be ready for the first period. I don't think they're going to fall on the ice again. They're not going to fall apart in that first period. They're not going to get down 3-1. They're going to make sure that does not happen. So I got Tampa winning game 2 and tying this series up at 1 apiece.
It's like for this one, I think both game plans are fine. It's with Tampa, you got to limit. When you giving the puck right back to Colorado, you got to make sure it's not on your side basically near your side of the blue line. So obviously you got to. That's something I think they'll fix. I think Colorado will still outshoot Tampa, but I think the shot differential will be much closer, probably within 10-ish, maybe 10 to 12. Because that's rough. For me, when you're the opposing team of Colorado, that's actually solid because Colorado's in my opinion, has the best offense. Yeah. Just Tampa, I think, has a better defense. Mm-hmm. That's why Tampa's been able to win so many games because they have an all-round, I think, a solid core. But even though I know we've said that, I know me and you, Cade, have said Colorado has looked like the best team in the NHL, despite the fact Tampa has been here before and they, I think, are more solid. Mm-hmm. And basically, I think if Tampa wins tomorrow, or is it Saturday? Yeah, I'm lost what track.
A day.
It's a day, but if they can get win game 2, this will be Tampa's series. But I'm going to go with Colorado. I'm going to probably die on this hill where I think Colorado will still manage to outscore them.
I mean, to be fair, that's a good hill to die on.
I mean, because you're dying on the hill of this is Tampa.
I'm dying on the hill of pick Tampa every time. It works 66% of the time, every time.
I'm going to go with Connie on this one. I'm going to go Colorado. I think they'll clean up a little bit. I think Colorado's quickness causes Tampa to get some of those turnovers, so I think they're still going to force a lot of those turnovers. I think Tampa Bay looked a little bit in that series in terms of they've obviously went back to back now, made it to the Stanley Cup 1-2. They've played a lot more games in this playoffs than Colorado has. Colorado didn't look rested at all. They look well rested and a lot quicker than Tampa just because I think they are feeling a little bit on their legs there from where they were at. So I think Colorado's going to go out there and take this game 2 as well. Just their quickness is too good right now.
I will say, kind of also piggyback with that is that Colorado, like what you said, that they look well rested and obviously they came out to play. It's like that's what you need, because you always get those teams that get a bunch of rest in this, whether it be in baseball or in hockey, or it's like mainly baseball is usually a big problem if you rest too much. But in hockey, it's like you're like rest too much, the series is lost because you're just not out there ready to go. And by the time you get into the series, it's already too late. And Colorado is like, we're not letting that happen. So, and obviously did a great job punching the first win, but obviously they got to keep it up.
Yeah, you got 3 more to go if you're Colorado. You got 4 more to go if you're Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the road to Omaha starts tomorrow. The beginning of actual Omaha ball. Good times for everyone that is here. Starting with at 1 o'clock, Texas A&M versus Oklahoma. 6 o'clock, Texas versus Notre Dame. Those will be some fun games. We're expecting a lot of fun here. And I want to know from you two, I know we talked about this a little bit previewing. Now it's time to actually make picks. I know, Andrew, you said you had brackets for us, but we'll just use this as a living record instead. But
sit on my work desk.
Yep, sitting on your work desk.
Left them on the desk.
It's okay. That's happened to everyone. Everyone has those days. You can have a case of the Mondays on a Thursday.
Exactly.
That's the thing that does happen. But I kind of want to get into this more. We have all 8 teams here. How does each team win the title? What would you say is the best path for each team? How can they win this and why?
I mean, do you want to go by game or you want me to say, like, my favorite? Like,
I mean, if you can go however you want. I'll let you choose.
Right. Well, I'll start with my favorite then.
Okay.
I think – I don't know I guess it's going to come from a surprise, but I'm going to ride on the Arkansas hill.
There you go.
Their talent of their offense and pitching – I think is the most balanced right now in terms of who's left in the bracket. They played obviously in a very good conference in the SEC, probably the best baseball conference, or obviously one of them, worst case if you want to say that. And listen, I get they got underseeded big time in here because of the way they finished the season. They dropped 4 of the last 5 series, and they lose the first 2 in the SEC playoffs. But what I saw in the regional, the first regional where they were able to out-hit everybody in a very good region, and then follow that up with, okay, our offense isn't going to go put up 20 runs a game again, but we're going to go hold North Carolina, a very good team, to I think it was 3 and 4 runs in that super regional. And what they were able to do there, I think, was very impressive, and I like them. And I think they've already turned the corner and getting away from that slow start. They're a very well-managed team. They're a very energetic team, too. I like the energy I saw when I was there, and I think that bracket 2, I think they'll bode well there. It's that the problem there is they got Stanford game 1. That's what might keep them from it. Obviously, Auburn's a ranked team and a very good team, but if I'm them, you got to obviously get past Stanford. That's the big one. Ole Miss and Auburn in that region, that's an interesting game. Ole Miss has already impressed me. I didn't think they'd make it this far, so maybe they continue to impress me, but I think Auburn would take care of them, and you kind of create – I think you'll see a Stanford-Arkansas rematch down the road there in that bracket. But I think up top, going back to the first bracket, I want to ride with Notre Dame on this one too. They're my pick up there, another good team. The problem is bracket 1's got all the really hot teams. Like, they're the ones that are really clicking at the right time and everything. Obviously, everyone is if you make the Final 8.
Yeah.
But you look at Oklahoma, what they did to get in here, get into – winning the Big 12 playoffs and everything. You look at Texas, the way they rallied, and obviously a top 10 team. Texas A&M is Texas A&M. So the better bracket's bracket 1, and they're going to beat each other up. And that's where it's going to be intriguing, where I wouldn't be surprised if a team that loses on day 1 will find a way to come back and win that bracket, just because it's such a good good bracket up there where anything can happen. I do like Oklahoma's balance, obviously. Texas A&M creates an interesting dynamic as well. But Notre Dame, underseeded again, they're riding that train and really impressed me. So I got Notre Dame and Arkansas.
All righty.
Yeah, for this one, like, I think I'm going to start with the bottom one. Obviously, I think my 2 favorite teams out of that is Auburn and Arkansas. And I think the winner of that bracket, I think, will be Arkansas. They're just playing much better at the right time. And obviously, overall, it's like you had to play a tough regional in Stillwater, and you managed to pretty much you didn't beat up North Carolina, but yeah, hell, your pitching came when you needed it, and when the hitting wasn't basically battering everyone. So obviously, Arkansas, I think, overall is the much more balanced team out of everyone because their pitching, when it's on, it's on. When it's hitting is on, it's the best in the nation. Well, the way they've played, especially watching it live, that was something to behold. And obviously, Auburn has been playing some of their best baseball. Obviously, one of the few ranked team, only one of 4 ranked teams that managed to make it here. So, and obviously, Ole Miss is another tough one. Stanford, there's a reason why is that number 2 by them?
Yeah,
there's a reason why they're number 2. They are really good, but they also struggled to get here because they had to play against a solid UConn team that was just playing really hot. But obviously, Stanford showed why they're number 2. But Arkansas is the heavy favorite in that one, and I'll be shocked if they somehow get eliminated early. That one will just shock me. And obviously, in the top one, I'm leaning on Notre Dame and Oklahoma. I think those 2 teams are the hot ones, and plus I also want to see A&M and Texas deal with elimination game early.
That would be fun.
Though A&M overall has played less games than OU because OU's had to play every necessary game possible, while as A&M didn't struggle much in their own region, and then they won the Supers in 2 against a solid Louisville team. So they're on much better I think a little more rest, but obviously every team's not that much rested from the other. I wouldn't be surprised to see OU somehow manage to pull one on A&M, and then Notre Dame, obviously, like you said, Andrew, they're going with that feeling of being underseeded and underappreciated, and they've been playing lights out for the most part. So I'd say out of that top one, Notre Dame's my favorite.
So I agree with the bottom. I think Arkansas is the favorite down there, even though Stanford does have that nice number 2 next to their name. But as we all know, that means absolutely nothing when you get to the postseason. Stanford, to me, has proven many a time again that, yes, they're a very good offensive team, but their starting pitching scares me. That is when you had your 3 starters against UConn, who is a good offensive team, granted, but when your starters go a combined 10 or 11 innings pitching in 3 games, something tells me nothing's right there. And when you get a team like Arkansas who can mash the ball whenever they feel like it, that sets up disaster for Stanford. It would not surprise me if they went 0-2. You have Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Auburn, who are all getting hot at the right time, all have crazy offenses that can go off whenever they need to.
No, I would probably also say, like, obviously with Ole Miss and Arkansas, they're feeling underappreciated.
Yeah, well, I think that goes for
mainly
every team.
Mainly Arkansas. Ole Miss, they were a 2 seed, right?
Ole Miss was
or a 3 seed.
I think they were a 3 seed. Yeah,
they
were a 3 seed.
They're just playing really great at the right time.
Yeah,
and Ole Miss has always had a really solid baseball program. I mean, there's a reason why their fans were rabid about their coach not doing well, and they basically were like. And I'm not sure, it's not exact words, but obviously you were paraphrasing like, well, if you don't get to a Supers, you're going to probably lose your job. Yeah. And then he made it to the World Series. So.
Yeah, then they made it to the World Series, and it's like, but now if you don't win a natty, you lose your job. Let's just keep up on this train as far as we can.
Just keep putting, if
you don't win 5 natties in a row, you're fired. Well, okay, now do it.
It's like, I think with the fan base, even though they're not going to want him necessarily fired, they're going to keep throwing gas.
I think half of it is a joke, like fire Mike Stoops, where that would still happen in like 2020. It's like, rehire Mike, just fire him again. I still don't like him.
But obviously, I think this is probably one of the more interesting College World Series, because you obviously have 3 teams in the top bracket that hate each other. Well, technically 4, but in baseball it's a little different.
Oklahoma hates every single one of these teams. I'll make that clear. I don't know how much hate Texas and A&M have for Notre Dame, but I know Oklahoma doesn't like any of these teams.
Well, it's like, if you're referring to just baseball.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you take the football element, they all hate each other.
Don't worry. The baseball
hate carries over.
It always carries over.
I will say the second round matchup's going to be pretty good.
But I will say, when it comes to hatred, it's not Notre Dame probably has the least amount of hate going their way because
probably, yeah.
It's mainly because obviously with Texas A&M and OU, they're all neighbors to each other. So it's obviously they were in the same conference together. A&M 2011 leaving, and then obviously OU and Texas going to be rejoining A&M maybe in a couple years or next year, who knows? Yeah, because we don't know if those contracts will ever get bought out. But obviously, it's like this one's just like it's very interesting. I know I'm repeating myself again. I think out of the 2 teams I'm favoring are Arkansas and Notre Dame.
See, to me on the top bracket, there's a lot of oddities because if we want to come down to it, what do you think is better to have in the World Series? Given how Omaha's ballpark is and everything, is it better to have a good pitching staff or is it better to have a great offense? If you had to choose one, what are you rolling with? I think I know what both of you two will say, but I just want to get your thoughts on it.
I'm going pitching.
There you go. So that'd be Notre Dame. Notre Dame would be your team. So you're on the money.
When it comes down to it, I need a guy that's going to be able to – every team's going to get base runners.
Yeah.
So you need a guy that's going to be able to come in, close the door, get the job done. You need to be willing to trust your starters. You need to be willing to trust your bullpen. And I know you're talking about the top bracket, but that's why one of the things that treats Arkansas so well is, how many times did their pitcher go 3 great innings, 4th inning, first time he struggles, gives up 2 guys, they're going to someone in the bullpen, and he's coming in, getting out of the jam, and it was incredible the amount of pitching changes I saw in the first 2 regions for Arkansas, and that's what it's going to come down to here, and that's one of the reasons why I like Notre Dame too. Is offenses show up. That's what's fun about baseball. You get the best offense, but on any given day they might put up a 1 run or 2 runs. Yeah, and no, it's a different sport, but look at the teams in baseball and the MLB that build off offense. Look at the Angels. Mike Trout and Ohtani, they went on, a 10-game losing streak? Yeah. And they're 2 of the best hitters in baseball. Arguably, you have 2 MVP players in your offense, and you get locked down on a 10-game losing streak or whatever. Until recent Phillies stretch, when you look at the end of May, you got power bats and Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellano, and your manager got fired. Yep. Not even halfway through the season. So that's where it always comes down to me is, can you get out of jams? Do you have a guy that's going to come in and lock the door down? So to me, it's pitching.
Yeah, that's where the Angels have seemed to have always struggled. I'd probably since their last major playoff appearance, their pitching has been really hit and miss. You might have a solid. Ohtani, obviously great pitcher and obviously a great hitter, but the rest of the pitching staff is, where is it? It's really not. You're really missing a lot of key pieces. Their starting pitching isn't overall and their bullpen isn't really that great. I think, and also you're missing. I remember they offered a big contract to Rendon, who played for the Nationals on their World Series run. They gave him a lot of money, and he hasn't really amounted to much of anything in Los Angeles as regards to people having eyes on some of those players. You don't hear anything about him. I'm not an Angels fan, so I won't.
Well, he just gets overlooked because other guys on his team. He's still playing some pretty good baseball.
But in the end, obviously for me, pitching is a major deal. As someone who pitched in high school, pitching is very important, and because it makes or breaks your team. If you can give out solid pitching pretty much throughout the entire game, you at least give your bats a chance to do something. Yeah. But the one thing is, obviously, I always look to the Stillwater Regional is that's basically a display of pitching just not being as effective. That's not always necessarily saying everyone was terrible. It's just that you ran into problems where pitching just failed you at the worst times, and the hitting just was. It's probably the best display of hitting in this year. You had Grand Canyon, Missouri State, Oklahoma State, and Arkansas just all hitting really well. Mm-hmm. So that's where pitching really matters. And I think Arkansas fixed their pitching struggles, and obviously Notre Dame's been pitching really solid. Yeah. And that's where I lean on those teams. And I could probably say I could lean on and obviously your defense is also a big play. Yeah. You don't have a solid defense, that's where I can look to Oklahoma, where if the pitching can be solid, if that's not as effective or they're still getting hit off of, you can rely on that defense to make plays. Yeah. That's where I would probably have OU as my third team as kind of leaning toward it, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's the great thing about it is there is no telling what's going to happen. Once you step on that field, anything's going to happen. But I think, to me, I prefer offense. I know that defense wins championships. I know that. I've heard that my entire life. But there's something to me about if you have an offense that can get to any pitcher at any time, you're always going to be a threat. If you can go as long as you can put anyone out there and you can get a few hits off them, you're going to win. You're going to win a lot.
And that's where I can say all of these teams, all 8 of them can.
Yeah, all 8 of them can absolutely hit.
I'd say the weakest hitting would be A&M because it's mainly because they've been playing good teams, but they haven't necessarily had a lot of games in this postseason where they've nailed everyone. It's mainly been low scoring a bit, but their hitting has come through to bail out their pitching.
Yeah.
But once again, that's me kind of knocking them, but it's like there's a reason why they were number 5 because they're really good overall as a team. Just pitching isn't necessarily on fire, but their hitting is pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can look at them. I would say look at Stanford. Auburn has done it. Ole Miss clearly did it against Southern Miss.
Yeah.
So that's where you can look at those. Texas has done it to East Carolina, but they didn't necessarily have a lot of their games where they're just hitting everybody. And OU's done it. They did it to Virginia Tech. So that's where every one of these teams can hit well. Just I think it will come down to pitching.
Yeah. If it comes down to pitching, like I said, I think Notre Dame is probably the best overall well-rounded team in the top bracket. Texas has a offense that can be out of this world. So I wouldn't be surprised if Texas beat Notre Dame.
No.
But you see Notre Dame run through the losers bracket and come back because they have the arms to do it. You saw it happen when they played Tennessee. They played 2 great games against them, but they had that one game in the middle where things got a little dicey. I think Texas will lose to Notre Dame the first game, though. And I'm just going to go down and start running through all my games here, what I think is going to happen in the first round, then I'll get back to you two.
That's fine.
But I think Notre Dame wins game 1. I think Oklahoma upsets Texas A&M. You look at the stats, they're very similar. I think Oklahoma is the better offense. Texas A&M has the better pitching staff, but A&M does not have the best defense in the world. They have only 96% fielding percentage, which is the worst in that upper bracket. So I think if Oklahoma can make A&M make some mistakes, they have enough speed to fly around on the bases to win that game. I think Oklahoma gets that upset there. Looking at the winners bracket number 2, I think Arkansas upsets Stanford, and I have Ole Miss beating Auburn. I think Ole Miss Auburn is that's like 11-10 potential. Those offenses are elite out there. It could also be 2-1 because they both have good pitching staffs. There is no in-between in that game. It'll go one way or the other. But that's what I see happening. I think Arkansas will make it to the finals. It just feels like that run for them after the year they had last year, being the number 1 team, getting knocked out at home by NC State. Now you're back with a team that no one expected to be here. This just feels like a year for them. But this also feels like a year for Ole Miss. It's the same story. No one thought they would be here. Same thing for Auburn. Picked second to last in your division. Texas A&M picked last in your division. No one expected these 4 from the SEC West to be here. They all have that momentum going, and that's what I love about it. The only teams that I think expected to be here the whole year, and we're told that, was Texas, who was preseason number 1, and Stanford, who was top 10. Those are the only 2 that I think expect to be here. I think that kind of hurts them a little bit in terms of, okay, we're here, now what do we do? Just a little bit. Where Stanford, you kind of are just teeter-tottering your way to Omaha. Yeah, we have enough talent to get here. Now you're going to run into teams that are hungrier than you. They've been ready for this the entire year. This is what they've dreamed of. Not to say Stanford hasn't, obviously. Of course, everyone dreams of going to Omaha as a kid.
I would say probably out of between Texas and Stanford, Texas is a better team because they had to go run through better competition.
Yeah, Texas, I think, ran through better competition. They had a more well-rounded conference. Stanford had Oregon State. That's about it. Which Oregon State's a great measuring stick, obviously. But I think Stanford had less amazing competition in the Pac-12.
I mean, that just kind of just show especially on the West Coast where a lot of, I know typically it's California kids, but you have that West Coast is filled with all kinds of talent. The fact that a lot of those other Pac-12 teams haven't been able to really utilize any talent at all kind of just shows Stanford and Oregon State obviously been able to get that talent, but it also shows the other schools just are not recruiting well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that goes more from kids going from the West Coast to the Gulf Coast because the SEC has some amazing recruiting they do down there. You look at LSU, you look at the Mississippis, you look at Arkansas, you look at Texas's.
That's also if you look at the Big 12 and the ACC, that's where you're stealing a lot of kids because though I would say Oklahoma and Oklahoma State usually get their kids from Oklahoma and Texas because Oklahoma has a great pipeline of great future college baseball players.
We do.
And it's obviously why I've always considered baseball to be the second best sport in Oklahoma, obviously behind football, because obviously people are going to prioritize football. Though I would say talent-wise, we have more guys who at least make it to a professional level than any of our players in football. Because obviously with OU and OU, we get most of our players from Texas.
We do. It's great. You got to take talent wherever you find it.
It's mainly kind of showing how good in regards to talent is in two different sports.
Yes.
Obviously, we have good players that come from Oklahoma in football, but Texas obviously is that pipeline.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, I think players from Oklahoma in baseball, I think, are just better overall, especially watching some of them and actually playing against some of them. So that's just my take on that.
Yeah. But I'm interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are. I know we've talked about teams that are probably the best in their bracket, but how does these first 2 days line up for you guys?
I'm gonna go Notre Dame over Texas. I think they're the hot team right now. Their pitching's as good as anybody's right now, and they'll be able to hold Texas afloat. I'm gonna go Texas A&M over Oklahoma. Again, I mean, anything can happen in that game. I just like Texas A&M overall. Oklahoma obviously riding a hot hand. We'll see what they're able to do. It wouldn't surprise me if they win. I clearly am going to go Arkansas over Stanford after I talk them up so much. And then I'll go Auburn over Ole Miss.
Yeah, so that'd be a little weird now. Arkansas is going to win this bracket, which is why they will lose to Stanford.
I think Auburn will get Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss's run will end there. And then even in the elimination game, I'll take Stanford over Ole Miss. And then I'll go OU over Texas.
Yeah, I think for the top one, we're all in agreement that I think we think that Notre Dame will take game one. Wait, did you say Texas would win? Or
I said Texas will make it close, but they'll lose.
Okay, I was wanting to make sure because what Andrew said. We all have Notre Dame taking that first one. I'm going to be with Andrew and have A&M take that one. But I think OU managed to get through that losers bracket to at least be able to play Notre Dame. Or wait, no, they probably wouldn't play Notre Dame. They would move to the other side.
They would play the loser of if OU beat Texas in the elimination game, they'd play the loser of A&M and Notre Dame.
We'll see.
Wait.
No, they don't flip it. So the loser of this game is going to go right there.
Oh, they don't do the cross one?
No.
Okay. Because
you say that, and then they'll be like, "Oh, by the way, we reinstated it," and it'll be like, "Why?"
I hate that so much. So
it'll be the winner of this bracket up here against the winner of that bracket.
Okay, I just because softball did that cross stuff, so it messed me kind of.
It messes everyone.
It messes everyone
every
up.
year.
So I think I believe OU will eventually have to play Notre Dame eventually, but that's where I'm going. I think Notre Dame gets to the finals. For the bottom one, me and Andrew have been talking up Arkansas, so I have Arkansas getting through their bracket with, I think, Auburn taking them to a necessary game. I just think Auburn is probably the second best team in that bracket, even though Stanford and Ole Miss are really good.
Yeah.
And I know I did initially talk up Ole Miss and how well they play, but I think Auburn will get one on them because they have a good pitching staff.
Yeah.
So I think it will be Notre Dame and Arkansas for the finals.
Yeah, it will be interesting for sure. As always, the road to Omaha starting tomorrow and then lasting for a very long time, which is good to see. Get baseball on for a while, nearly over an entire week of college baseball dominating the ESPN family networks. Interesting to see how that will do. Ratings-wise, I'll, of course, break that all down when we get to our Tuesday show.
But I do wish college baseball would actually get more TV during the regular season. Instead, they really don't have
Sir,
much.
you will see CFB 150 on every network. We will show every documentary about college football several times.
Yeah,
we'll air the same one 15 times in a row.
It's not going to change overnight, but baseball is in a lot better shape than it was 5 years ago. They have a ton of – I get it, they're not on the mainstream yet, but you do get a lot of games on ESPNU. They have a deal with ESPN Plus. A ton of games are shown throughout the year on ESPN Plus.
That is true.
Again, I agree with you. I hope eventually they get more actual TV time. But I will say it's in a lot better shape than it was when I was in high school. And because I always wish I could watch more games then.
I will say that
I do think it's taken a turn for the positive.
Mm-hmm.
It just won't change overnight. So I think 5 years from now, this is going to be as popular as basketball and football. Obviously not. But I think you will get it on some mainstream channels.
and I will say my dad told me growing up that the reason why college baseball does not get the exposure it really needs is because MLB doesn't want to compete with college because they kind of, even though college baseball is usually over halfway done by the time MLB starts up, or actually no, they're already in almost toward the postseason by then. But it's one of those things where it's just like, there's no issue. It's like just during that time, I understand, but you also have an issue with baseball. It runs during college basketball. So obviously I can understand basketball takes a priority because it's a more popular sport, but you got to at least be able to show more around around all the conferences. SEC, that's not going to be an issue because they have the SEC network, and the ACC network also exists. But it'd be nice to see some Pac-12 games and also see Big 12 occasionally. Yeah. But obviously they're going to just relegate those games to ESPN Plus.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm glad we brought this up because this gives me a rant to go on to end the show, and I haven't had a good rant in a while about professional baseball and why I despise the system they use. Rob Manfred today, there's a quote, question someone asked him about like the future of streaming and things like that. And he said, "There's a strong sense among ownership that an undertaking we're referring to as MLB Media should step into the digital space, in particular to provide fans with greater and more flexible opportunities to watch games."
What does that mean?
Duh.
It's like,
AKA do what the NFL does. Show all the games. Show the games. Do not do this regional sports network stuff that no one wants to see. And now you've got Sinclair. I know for the Royals they're going to do this. The streaming service they're going to roll out where it's like you can watch every Royals game for $25 a month. And it's just like, no, don't do that. And it leads me to this. I'm not excited about this at all, this map here you see. This is the MLB on Fox coverage map for this Saturday. This is an Oklahoma-specific rant to me because I get frustrated about things like this. When you look at this, the blue area is stations that are going to be showing the Cleveland-LA Dodgers game. You got California, West Coast, makes sense. You keep moving in where this makes sense. Why is Texas and Oklahoma showing the Dodgers game when St. Louis is right here? What is the difference of here versus here? I know there are more Cardinals fans in Oklahoma and Texas than there are Dodgers fans because the Cardinals have been historically in this area the whole time. I don't know anyone in Oklahoma City or Tulsa that is a Dodgers fan. I know way more Cardinals and Royals fans. I'm sure there are Dodgers fans, don't get me wrong. But this makes no sense to me.
They're probably more metro area.
I got two reasons for you on this one because actually I don't fully disagree with it this time, and here's why. You get to this part of the region, and yeah. I get it, St. Louis right there, but you get a lot of neutral fans because you get a lot of neutral fans there. So my two reasons: first, what minor league teams in Oklahoma City?
Oh, I understand that, but the Cardinals.
That's why you get a lot of carryover there. A lot of Oklahoma City fans who are watching these Dodgers players grow through the farm system. They're going to stay Dodgers fans, and they're going to want to keep seeing how those players are doing.
I understand that.
You're gonna especially what teams in Tulsa, the Dodgers as well.
Yeah, but so Tulsa's showing the Cardinals game. Oklahoma City
it's kind of like halfway, but that half of the state's close to St. Louis, so that's why. So you're getting there. Like when you look at OKC, it's all blue.
Yes.
So Tulsa, yes, but you look at OKC, who are you calling up? You're calling up AAA, which is OKC.
Yes.
So that's why you're doing that. So that makes sense because you're catering to the AAA fans who are going to stay Dodgers fans from watching those guys go.
Yeah.
Number two, I get Paul Goldschmidt's with the Cardinals. I get Nolan Arenado's there. But overall, who's got the more superstars? Dodgers. And when you got a lot of neutral fans, you want to advertise your superstars.
Yes, I understand it, but you got St. Louis versus Boston. That is no one wants to see the Cleveland Guardians. How many people do you know want to actually see the Cleveland Guardians outside of this area?
I mean, if they call themselves the Spiders, I'd be interested.
More than you think.
They
have a possible MVP on their team. Jose Ramirez is one of the highest players in the game right now. You have one of the better pitchers in Shane Bieber. So, I mean, and that's what also depends on who's the pitching matchups.
Yeah.
Boston's got not the best pitching staff. If you're going to get a Shane Bieber versus Clayton Kershaw game, man, that's going to draw a lot of fans. So I don't necessarily disagree with it this time. And again, it's kind of half and – I mean, it's a little obviously more blue, but it is close to half and half. But again, I think with them having 2 minor league teams in the state of Oklahoma, that plays a major factor.
Yeah, but to me, my main argument is that the Cardinals have the entire state of Oklahoma in their regional sports network territory, which means you should be able to watch that game. However, that now means if you live in Oklahoma City or southern Oklahoma or the Panhandle, you are now not going to be able to watch this game at all, unless you listen to it on the radio or have MLB.
Well, however, that might not be true, though, because this might be another reason why, a lot of times they show it both when you're in that market. I know when the Phillies have played on national TV this year, they still show it on your normal TV station.
I've checked. Bally Sports Midwest is not airing the game. It's not going to be anywhere.
I would say that's another possible option, because I know a lot of times, even when the Phillies play on Fox, they're still on the regular station. So if you're on your regular station, you're going to try to show a different game in that market anyway.
I wouldn't know this struggle because I'm able to watch any Royals game.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a struggle for Cardinals fans who the state of Oklahoma has been engraved into the Cardinals culture for as long as I can remember. The Cardinals have had farm teams in Oklahoma since the 1940s. Obviously, they don't exist anymore, but they have had a grip on Oklahoma. KMOX used to reach Oklahoma all the time, and you could always hear the Cardinals. And then over the last 5 years, I understand with the Dodgers shifting, but even when the Astros had AAA and AA teams in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, this was never a problem. The Cardinals always took priority with the Astros and the Royals and the Rangers. But now with the Dodgers coming in, all of a sudden everything has to be the Dodgers. The Cardinals are still, to me, more important than the Dodgers. I understand that may not be the case to people in the Metro and they call the shots. But the Cardinals still play a vital part to Oklahoma baseball culture. Well, I don't understand this at all.
It's like in more rural areas, you're going to find more Cardinals fans. I mean, being here in Alva, I know it's like been here for I don't know how long, but they've always had the Alva Cardinals, which is one of the Little League teams they have, and we've actually played them. I've actually played them when I was with the Perkins Mustangs for an 8 and under. But it's like they were always. And I've also played on a sit when I was doing Parks and Rec for Stillwater. I was on a team for 2 years, the Cardinals. Yes. So it's like you're gonna find more. I've known more Cardinals fans than obviously like with you, but obviously for me being a Royals fan, it's like I'm able to watch. It's weird how Kansas City doesn't have this. I understand proximity. I don't know how really close they really are versus St. Louis, but it's like the fact that Kansas City isn't having this issue, but yet the Cardinals are having this problem is weird.
Yeah, it's like to me the thing that drives me up a wall is if the Dodgers were the main demographic of this state, I would accept my fate that the Cardinals are no longer relevant in the state of Oklahoma. I wouldn't be happy about it, but I'd accept it. But the 3 teams that dominate Oklahoma that are non-Yankees, non-Red Sox are the Cardinals, the Royals, and the Rangers. The Rangers, I would draw a line pretty much at I-40 and south. That's Rangers territory, which makes sense. You would pick like game of the week style thing. But it's like I don't understand why Oklahoma is like slowly turning its back on the Cardinals. Like even Cardinals-Cubs 2 weeks ago. That's a giant National League rival, one of the top 3 rivalries in baseball, I would say.
It is.
Oh, we'll show Dodgers versus Diamondbacks. Like, what?
A game that no one cares about.
It was like, well, I understand the Dodgers are great and all, and I understand people want to watch them, but I would rather see, a historic rivalry or 2 amazing teams than Dodgers versus Team of the Week.
It's one of these, once again, it's one of those things where instead of MLB allowing it to where you can watch any game you want, obviously that's really hard because you only have so many stations to work with.
Yeah.
Basically, they're also wanting you to buy a package to where you have to buy the MLB.
They want the MLB TV or whatever, or extra innings or any of that stuff.
They want you to get those packages so that way they're getting more money out of you, but also you're able to watch whatever game you want instead of setting it up to where they make games available on multiple different stations. But obviously that's where, for me, you always had the Dish and DirecTV have the extra 6,000 whatever they're called.
Yeah.
But you have those alternative channels where at least with the packages that I have, I'm able to watch any game I want for the most part, but obviously I'm going to watch Royals all day. But it's like it's available there for me to buy stuff for, but I don't. It's like you obviously want to. You don't necessarily want to do that. You want it to be able to national TV.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't know.
I used to be able to just live stream the Cardinals on the Fox Sports website, and that's how I would do it for years. I would just because it would come through Fox Sports Oklahoma as the Cardinals' alternative broadcast, and I would just click that. But over the past 2 or 3 years, they've taken that away to where it's like, which doesn't make any sense to me because we're still in their regional sports network.
Well, and that's where MLB's problem is with the blackout stuff. I mean, in terms of this part, which is happening, it'd be Saturday, it's really no different than the NFL if you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like the NFL, they do the same thing. They're going to cater to what, I mean, look at the Browns. I mean, Oklahoma's gotten Browns versus whoever, no matter how good or bad the team is because of Baker.
Yes.
That's what's going to draw the attention. Again, here,
and I hate it.
It's a huge.
Great.
No, it's not as great because you're
don't
taking.
worry, you won't have to worry about it after last season. You won't worry about it this
Good,
season.
I get to watch.
We'll
more
be Panthers territory now if he gets traded there.
I get to watch more Chiefs.
No. Who wants to see a good
team?
Go
to the East Coast then.
Well, no, they'll follow Baker wherever he goes.
Yeah.
It's not the brand. It's the player because he grew up in Oklahoma. It's just like if Oklahoma State had a good quarterback that would transition well into. Let's take Mason Rudolph. If he next year took over for Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, I wish, and went out and played very well.
And I'd hate it because I want to watch Chiefs.
No, I get.
No. I'm telling you, I would hate it. I understand why. I'd hate, as a fan of the Chiefs, I hate it. I mean, I like seeing Rudolph. I would like to see Rudolph do well, but it's like I have my own team I would like to watch. But I understand the perspective, obviously, because obviously been having to deal with it ever since Baker got in. Mm-hmm. It's like it's like anytime Chiefs and Browns were on at the same time, they'd always pick the Browns, even though it's like it's like I don't want to watch the Browns get their butts kicked every time. I want to watch the Kansas City Chiefs play. But
sir, you will watch Baker hand the ball off to Nick Chubb 25 times. It will be awesome.
So it's like I understand it's like don't take my statements wrong. It's like I get why it happens. I'm just saying I don't like it. I hate it. It's like, well, I'd rather watch a team that is regionally close to me, or at least obviously I want to watch my team play. Chiefs would have priority if it wasn't the fact that everyone's like, we want to watch Baker. You want to watch Baker suck the entire time? Okay.
Well, I mean, you got to take that up with the state of Oklahoma then. I mean, that's just
that's where more of my criticism lies is with KOKH Channel 25 who does this. That's my main argument. I just wish the MLB had a way to kind of better, like, hey, if they're in your coverage area, show their game. Like, if we were complaining about this if we lived in Wichita, I'd understand it a lot more.
It also doesn't help in regards to, like, with the NFL, you're having that issue. Obviously, cable's a different story, but it's one of those things where it's like, I would at least like to be able to have my option to be able to flip to a different channel that could air the game. Like, for instance, like
ESPN used to do this with college football, where the main game would be on ABC and the other game would be on ESPN too.
Like if
they aired it on like FS1 was in like, okay, you don't get St. Louis on Fox, but if you have FS1, you can pick it up, or FS2 even. I would be okay with that.
Yeah, they have to FS2 just because how big of whatever they show on FS1 on Saturdays, boxing or whatever it is. I've never gotten into that.
Which is like, I would understand that and be fine with it. You know, I would accept that. You know, I have FS2 so I could do that. I understand a lot of people don't. It would drive people crazy. But that's better than, oh, sorry, you just don't get the game because you don't have Bali, or Bali isn't in your coverage area. Guess you got to go find a pirate stream or find it on the radio somewhere.
But again, that's where MLB needs to fix. There wouldn't be this issue if they didn't have such strict blackout restrictions.
I agree.
All this leads back to that. If they didn't have the blackout restrictions, you go on ESPN Plus, go on that package because they have a deal. You go watch it on ESPN Plus. You could go on MLB TV. You can go on YouTube TV. No, the problem is it always comes back to the blackout market. And for some reason, MLB continues to have a very strict blackout market here. And that until they fix that, they will continue to have the streaming problems. And going back to your college baseball take, if that's true about the MLB not wanting to
that's just stuff that I've been told. So.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying if that's true, that's MLB's problem, because I think one of the biggest reasons, I could be 100% wrong with this is my opinion, why one of the biggest reasons college basketball and college football, I think that helps the NFL and the NBA, because you're able to watch some of those top college guys transition into professionals, and you're able to grow your game that way. And again, that's part of the problem with baseball in terms of even kids playing it these days.
Yeah.
You grow up, you're hearing how big college sports are. You want to make college sports. Well, you turn on your TV, you go on your computer. What college sports are you always seeing? You're always seeing football. You're seeing basketball. Even You're not, and that's part of their problem. So if that is where the conflict is, then MLB needs to relax on that because the more college baseball you show, you're only going to grow your professional game.
That's the one thing is that whether that might be something the NCAA is causing, where it might be NCAA, I don't know, or MLB, but it's basically one of those things where it's like, and that's the argument that anyone like if I believe it is true that the MLB has been hindering. It's one of those things where it's like, why hinder the college part? Because that's where you grow your, like you said, grow your sport. That's the reason why that's why the NBA is popular, is as big as it is, even though you could probably make an argument, well, it could build on its own. It's like, without the college, because people love college sports, it's one of those things where NFL would not be as big as it was if it was for their college stars. Like, many of those big guys coming up, like, it's like, one's from, like, you have many big superstars coming from college up to the NFL, and then you might have those late bloomers that weren't necessarily the biggest star in college, but they all of a sudden blow up in the NFL. That's more of an NFL development thing than a college thing. But college helps builds professional sports. Whether you want to look at whether you prefer professional or college more, it's like anyone like NFL would not be where it is without the backbone of college football being as big as it is.
Yes.
And obviously same thing with basketball and any other major sport. But it just feels like with baseball, college has always been hindered because there's like for some reason a priority by major networks to always have MLB take priority over college, though obviously when you hit the postseason, ESPN does show more college baseball. Yeah. But it doesn't feel like there's enough of it because over half the games majority of those games get relegated to ESPN Plus, which I understand you can't air everything, but it's like it'd be nice to have 2 to 3 channels to be able on ESPN to at least show more baseball. Mm-hmm. ESPNU will always show baseball. That's just a guarantee because it's a college station.
It's a college.
But ESPN, channel. I wish ESPN2, I wish would show more. But obviously, you have other things that take priority.
Yeah, no, gotta put that on SEC network.
But also, it's mainly because ESPN's trying to carry so many different things at once. I mean, when you have hockey and it was just they got hockey. You have hockey, the NHL, the NBA, and college baseball and softball all competing for TV time.
And keep in mind, you have the new softball leagues that just got started, so they got their deal inked with ESPN as well. So you see that on ESPN and ESPN2 now, the Athletes Unlimited stuff.
It also shows that Fox and NBC and CBS just aren't as into sports anymore as they used to be because they were the stations that carried everything. It seemed like ESPN, obviously obviously they were the latecomer versus the other ones, but ESPN just over time overtook everybody because they prioritized sports over the other networks.
Well, the mouse has more money than anyone else too.
That is true, but
some of the partners for everybody nowadays. So they just benefit from that.
They have money in everything. It seems like.
My last thing. I mean, just one quick example. Let's just stick with Baker. I mean, Baker's taken over a whole state.
Yeah, that is true.
He's made the Cleveland Browns relevant in Oklahoma. You look at them out. You walk down in Oklahoma City. Look at all the Baker jerseys that are being worn off of Browns jerseys. I mean, that's where you're growing your college game is relevant. I mean, you're not seeing anybody walk around with college baseball jerseys that often down the city.
But here's the not to cut you off, but here's the thing that I think with the Baker thing, because the first week he started, they were not televised in Oklahoma. That first 2 weeks, it took News 9 getting I think they got 10,000 phone calls in 2 hours or something like that. It took a massive push. And which was funny because the game was airing on Fox, so they called the wrong people. But they got blown up with phone calls of why is Baker not on my TV? Well, first of all, we don't have the game. Go direct your attention to Fox. They have the game, and so Fox got a lot of calls later that day to where, hey, put Baker Mayfield on TV. This guy is the face of Oklahoma, whether you want him to be or not. And I know that doesn't bode well with Oklahoma State fans. I understand that. But it's he is the most popular player in Oklahoma because of what he did at OU.
It's
No,
been,
exactly.
yeah. Well, it's also you guys gave him the Messiah complex.
Yes. Well, he did basically. It was like if we had a Barry Switzer player nowadays. That did help
So
too.
can you do that with Jalen Hurts too, so I can get all the Eagles games?
I would love to do
We
that.
also have Lane Johnson on our team, so we got a couple Oklahoma.
I'm just surprised you guys just.
Jalen.
I'm just surprised you
Here's
guys
the
just
thing.
didn't do that with Kyler Murray. Despite the fact he was a better player.
Well, the
We
difference
do
is Baker lived at Oklahoma. Like, he was there for years. Kyler and Jalen transferred there. That's the issue.
Well,
Like,
I mean, Baker transferred there too, but he was a 3-year guy.
Well, yeah,
instead
but
of
that's my
one.
point. We talk about loyalty. He was there for a while. Like, he helped bring back Oklahoma, and
he was given the keys under Bob Stoops, and then he had that last year with
Lincoln,
which I would say was his best year.
Yeah.
Which I understand. Like, I get it why OU fans love him.
Yes.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sorry, but a single player should not take priority over allegiances to teams. It's like, for me, it's like there's more. Obviously, with Kansas City doing well, you have Oklahoma. It's like those that are loyal to a team or picking either Kansas City, Dallas, or any of these other teams. It's like, we would like to at least be able to watch the games we would like to watch. But the fact that the reason why anyone's even watching the Browns in Oklahoma is because of one player is what drives me up the wall.
Well, see, here's the thing.
It's it's bringing viewership. I understand, but it drives me crazy because it's like, where were these fans? It's like it's like an argument I had with you where it's like when there's no allegiance to teams, it's when I consider a sport dead or not really something I want to watch.
that's what you're gonna get when you don't have a professional team in the state.
Yeah.
So that's my point. Is
Well, even when you do have a professional, because this started happening with Joe Burrow last year, you start seeing Louisiana, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Shreveport markets start airing a lot more Bengals games. Now, if the Bengals went head-to-head with the Saints still took priority, but people got mad by that. They're like, we want to see Joe Burrow play. What the heck are you guys doing? It's like, okay, do you not want to watch the Saints? It's like, I don't know. He is our guy. So I think that's kind of weird where we're seeing in some places, especially places with college football, rich history, and especially when you have NFL teams that are either kind of falling off. I wouldn't really say the Saints are falling off, but not doing as well as they once were. You still see college football can overtake the NFL just in sheer power, not in terms of size. That will never happen. But in terms of getting people fired up about rooting for their guy.
It's more of along the lines for me is that I prioritize a team over an individual player. And that's basically a lot of, like with OU fans, they prioritize their team over necessarily individual players. Now, they love particular individual players like Baker, but the team took more priority over him. Like, for instance, if he transferred before the 2017 season started, despite the fact all he did for Oklahoma, they wouldn't care about him.
No, people would be livid. Norman would have been on fire for a day or two.
But that's one reason why I hate it with professional sports. It's more of an issue with the NBA than necessarily the NFL, because while you might have your Tom Brady fans, you still have more people that are allegiance to their team, because New England didn't really lose a lot of fans. You might have people that went and rooted for Tom Brady, but they still kept people in with their team.
Yeah, there were a lot of people I knew where it was like, Tampa now has Brady, so I'll root for both because they're NFC, so we can do both.
So it's one of those things for me is like, it's like, for me, my allegiance has been with the Chiefs since 2011. Yeah. Mainly because I've been more into Kansas City than I was. Well, it's like initially, it's like growing up a Dallas fan, I just kind of, a lot of things Dallas was doing really drove me away from ever really wanting to root. They weren't my favorite team.
But they had the greatest color commentator, quarterback Tony Romo.
That is true. He is a great color commentator. But obviously, I'm more of a Kansas City guy. So, like, anytime Kansas City really has any professional teams, obviously, when it comes to basketball, like, if Kansas City got a basketball team, my priority would still be the Thunder, because obviously we have a professional team here. So that's never going to change. But it's like, my allegiance is to the team, not players. Yeah. As much as I would love to see Mason Rudolph succeed, am I going to root against him when they play the Chiefs? Yes, but I want to see him do well. That's just how my thing is, and it drives me up the wall when people only root for teams because of a particular individual.
See, 99.9% of the time, I agree with you. Like with the Mavs, I will always root for the Mavs. Even if Luka was to go to the Lakers tomorrow, I would be extremely mad about that, and I would say things that I shouldn't. But I would still root for the Mavs. The difference to me is when you don't have a team that you've been loyal to. And I think Oklahoma's a bit different in that it used to be that way with basketball. You had a lot of people who was just kind of pick a team and they'd follow a player. It was like, oh, okay, cool, we have whoever. You know, there were a lot of people who's like, okay, Lakers, yeah, because Kobe. Okay, yeah, Cavs because LeBron. Okay, maybe some Mavs people because they like Dirk and, you know, hey, we're kind of close to Texas.
You had Spurs, Dirk, you had
Mavs, Spurs, yeah. Everybody.
There was a collection of many different teams.
You had nearly everybody. And then when the Thunder came, most people united around a team, which makes sense. That's how that works. But football is different because we don't have a team to really rally around. I mean, you have the Cowboys, and a lot of people pick them because of proximity and winning,
quote-unquote winning.
But we have to put that in quotes unless you were live, you know, unless you're over the age of 27 and have seen them win a Super Bowl in your lifetime. But to me, it's like, especially for this younger generation of fans who Oklahoma's a football-heavy sport. Football is ingrained to you almost by being born in this state. That's just what happens. Even if you don't care about sports, you're going to hear about how football is. That's just a thing you're going to talk about at some point to pass the time. And because there's no real loyalty, I would say, to any team, it's just kind of, oh, okay, I like them, I guess I'll root for them. Like, that's how I was. I was raised in a household where there was one rule with the NFL. You can root for any team you want except the Dallas Cowboys. That's how I was raised. So it's anyone but Dallas. And so we just rooted for OU players. My dad, like I said, was a Patriots fan. Why? They had a lot of old Big 8 players when he first started watching football. They had a lot of guys from Nebraska, a lot of guys from Oklahoma, a lot of guys from Colorado, a lot of guys from Missouri that they would pick. So he grew up rooting for them. And then, you know, having Tom Brady when he got older in life, that helps too when you have a constant winner. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'll just root for whoever. So it was like, okay, Sam Bradford. Loved him in college. First, I guess, childhood hero, I guess you could say, on the football field for me was watching Sam Bradford destroy defenses. So I followed him when he went to St. Louis. Okay, we already root for the Cardinals and Blues and other sports. This works perfectly. And so I rooted for Bradford. Then when he went to, you know, Minnesota, I followed him there. When he went to Philadelphia, my dad and I would sit down if the Eagles were on TV, be like, okay, let's see, can Bradford will Philly to a playoff spot?
No.
Well, let's see if this can. Oh, dang it, he threw 3 incompletions in a row. Well, you know, good
luck. Dallas that one game.
Yeah, except that one game he crushed Dallas. We all thought it was hilarious because we didn't like the Cowboys and Bradford did well. So we always followed people around, you know, okay, Adrian Peterson's doing well. We're going to see how he's doing. And then when Baker came, it was such a kind of different player because you've had players that rile up fan base and so on, but he had that it factor where he was going to beat you and he was going to tell you how he was going to beat you and that we were so great at this that we're just going to roll over and we're going to win, which is how Oklahoma used to be in the 70s and 80s. It made everyone mad except OU fans. They loved it. And so seeing that kind of player,
with any team having that form of success, it's going to drive everyone else crazy.
Yeah, when you have a fan base that's cocky about how they're going to beat you and we're going to do this, this, and this, and then they do it, it's going to drive people insane. Which, of course, when the opposite happens and they lose, it's very funny to look at them and be like, lol, you lost. That's just how that works. But when all that happened and Baker went to the NFL, a lot of people I knew who kind of felt disenfranchised by the Cowboys, they weren't really doing anything anymore. The Chiefs were too far away because Oklahoma City to Kansas City is like, okay, that's a bit of a reach there because they're nearly Missouri.
How is that a bit of a reach whenever whenever they're in Cleveland's in Ohio?
Because they didn't have anybody we related to. They didn't have any OU guys that we really thought. Now they had the Belldozer, which was cool when they got him.
They also had Williams.
Yeah, they also had Williams, but it was just like he was in a big-time play. He was good, obviously, but he wasn't like a face of a team type of player. Belldozer was a fun gimmick quarterback that was hilarious because we'd put him in and we'd put the tight end basically in a quarterback. But Baker kind of changed that, and even when I went to the spring game this year, I talked to people, we don't care about the NFL at all. We're just here to watch Baker Mayfield play because that man will will anyone to victory because of how passionate he is. Don't laugh. This is what this guy was like 75 years old. I felt so bad for him. He lives in like Altus or something.
I'll still laugh at him.
But it was like, he willed this team to victory. You know, he helped the Browns get to the playoffs. That's like, you know, that's drawing blood from a stone, basically.
Me looking at Chubb and the guys that around him.
But I mean, people understand that. But it was like he was a part of that, and Cleveland hadn't had a quarterback like that.
That's true.
And so he really, you know, brought that energy, brought Oklahoma to them. And there were a lot of OU fans on social media that supported him, of course. And there was this like kind of nice alliance between the Cleveland and Oklahoma people. And then you had all this go down, and it was, okay, time to make fun of Cleveland, I guess. Go have fun going back to the basement then, you know, because Deshaun Watson, whatever happens with him. So you're going to see wherever Baker gets traded, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a large contingency of OU fans continue that tradition. Like, when I went to the spring game this year, I saw hundreds of people wearing orange because they were wearing Baker Mayfield. I've never seen that much orange at an OU game before.
Well, yeah, and my final point, that's my point.
Yeah, I know. I'm not really digressing from you here.
The TV thing is always going to follow what the state wants. The state wants Baker Mayfield and the OU and the OSU guys, and that's why this is.
Yes. So, but to me, it's a little bit different, I feel like, because the Cardinals have ingrained themselves in Oklahoma for a long time. Like, if Kansas City, if they came out and started broadcasting, like, directly in Oklahoma, they had a radio network set up across the entire state and not just Tulsa. If it was Oklahoma City all the way down to, Lawton and Enid and even Guyman, that would be a lot different. You'd probably see a lot more pro-Kansas City sentiment because that's what Dallas did. They broadcasted all the way up to Oklahoma City, so they still get priority, which, and the whole America's team thing helps too. So I think to me, there is a difference, but I understand to other people there isn't. I guess is the main thing. I guess we'll just agree to disagree on this.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
And also maybe I'm just very old school in my mindset in regards to allegiances.
Well, like I said, I agree with you most of the time. I just feel like this is one of those weird exceptions to the rule.
Well, it's mainly because you didn't really have a team growing up.
Yeah.
That mainly is a reason. That's where, okay, I can understand that sentiment. That doesn't mean I agree with it.
Yeah, that's
basically where I'm at. Like, I understand they're going to go where the state thinks priorities should go to. I understand that. That doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah, like take my family for an instance. I have an uncle that's a Steelers fan, and then a cousin that's a Ravens fan, and then, me who was rooting for the Browns, and it was like all we need is one person to root for the Bengals, and we have the entire AFC North under our household.
And you need someone from Louisiana for that.
Yeah, I was like, well, we don't have anyone from there. So it was just like, it was funny to me in that's just how Oklahoma is. There was no real, and, I've talked to people, and they changed teams like the wind. It was like, oh, yeah, I like the Raiders. Now I like the Steelers. And, maybe next week they'll like the Cowboys. Probably not, because if they were a Steelers fan, they were probably taught not to like them. But, it's weirder here when you don't have a team than when you do. Because in the NBA, you're not going to get this. You're going to get, if the NBA, which they should never do not ever do this. But if they did the regional stuff, it would make me upset because Dallas would never get shown if Oklahoma City was on at the same time. That would just be a fact of life I would have to deal with. But I would still be in the Mavs regional network because the Mavs at one point had territory here. The Cardinals once had territory here, but they get thrown out the window for a team that's, halfway across America just because they have a farm team here that, yes, they're doing well, but at the same time, I still don't know how many people they've latched onto because, oh, yeah, Oklahoma City is the Dodgers, so I like the Dodgers.
Well, when I go to Oklahoma City every once in a while, I've seen more Dodgers stuff than Cardinal stuff. Like walking around the city.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like.
I guess we've just had different experiences then.
Well, it's like, I think that's, obviously, like you said, it's mainly because obviously Dodgers are doing well.
And that's the other thing. Dodgers travel everywhere. Like, Dodgers is such a big fan base at this point. They're basically taking over the Yankees. Like, the LA stuff is bigger, is almost as big as the New York stuff. They're in the playoffs every year. They have arguably a top 5 player. They got probably the best. Again, they follow the players when they don't have a specific team.
And also it's like obviously with me and Cade growing up here, obviously like he said in the last 5 years that's kind of changed. It's like obviously more Cardinal stuff. There used to be a lot of Cardinal stuff growing up when I obviously going in the Metro and any place like Stillwater, if they even had any professional stuff, you saw a lot of Cardinal stuff, but obviously that's changed where obviously my last years of high school, there was still no Dodger stuff, but there was like less professional stuff. There was more college, Metro area that slightly changed. There was less Cardinal stuff coming in. So obviously, like you said, more, it's whatever.
I guess to me it was also weird because I never really had that factor when Houston had the Red Hawks here. Where it's just like you never got that factor from them. Where it's like, oh, hey, that's an Astros hat. What are you doing here?
It's like you never had no Astros stuff here.
Yeah, which this is why I wish Cardinals would just put a AAA team in OKC just for funsies. I know they'll never move from Memphis because they have a great deal going there with the Redbirds, but it's like I would like one OKC Cardinals team. I'd be very excited about that. But I guess that's the best way to put it. I just agree to disagree, and that's just where we'll be.
That's part of this.
Yeah, that's just how life works sometimes. So On that note, it has been a wonderful show. It has been a long show. This is like 30 minutes over what we usually do.
Well, when we got a few debates that went long.
We actually had some discussion today, which is always a good sign. So for Connor Gray, for Andrew Santangelo, I'm Cade Kennedy. We will be back. Wow, I can't talk. I'm running out of words.
2 hours.
Yeah, nearly 2 hours, so this happens eventually. We will be back Tuesday around 5:30 or so. Of course, if you want to know when we go live exactly, feel free to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. And be sure to like the video once this comes out on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, whether it be NWTV7 or the Guys Who Stare at Stats. A link to that channel will be in the description below. One final time, thank you for tuning in, and have a great night, everybody.